Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, this is Jennie Walker, and welcome to Closet Conversations. Today I want to talk about my biggest mistake and other mistakes I've made selling vintage clothing over the years. And I realized I hadn't really talked about it, but I keep making one huge mistake over and over again, so I thought we'd kind of get into it. So I guess if I go back and I think about how I could make this particular error is to think about how I got into my love of clothing and fashion in the first place. And I was one of these people who played in their mother's closet and played with their clothes and would play in my own closet. And literally in my own closet, I would stare at it and I would organize it where every button was buttoned, every bow was tied, everything was organized by color and sleeve length. And, I would just spend hours in there just arranging and organizing shoes and blouses and dresses. And, okay, this is in high school. So I had an unusual obsession with clothing always, and that was some of the things I would do. So it was always, to me, about getting it perfect. Like, it had to be just right. It had to be perfect. It had to be completely in order. Every heel needed a tap on it because I used to, walk on the sides of my feet. Like, every heel had to be redone and perfect. It was all about that. So when I think about that, it's kind of natural that I would get into my biggest mistake selling vintage, which is passing over items because of the condition. And one of the things is what my mother would say, daughter, she always would say if I didn't know something, now, daughter, there's a hole in your knowledge. So there's a big old hole in my knowledge on how to restore vintage. And, I didn't really think about it, but if you think about a museum and what they have to go through to restore things of, could be hundreds or thousands of years old, essentially it's the ultimate vintage, right? But they are painstakingly knowing how to repair and refurbish and to get the color back. And this is an aspect of vintage I really have completely avoided and overlooked. And so often when I'm out sourcing for vintage in person, I'll see crazy designer stuff and I walk right on by because of the condition, because there's a moth hole or two or three or four, or it's stained, has the pitch stains and things like that. And I'm thinking, I don't know what to do with that. The times I have purchased something that wasn't in great condition and it sold, I was always mind blown. I'm like, how and why did this person buy it? Because I'm always underestimating someone else's ability to bring it back into shape or what their usage might be. So my biggest mistake has been overlooking and walking by ultra designer things in vintage that were damaged. And what I've come to learn here very recently is that someone recently told me, which is Mitchell Karp from Mitchell's in Palm Springs, he's like, girl, everyone needs their group of people behind them that can repair and restore. Like, you need your person who can reweave, you need the good dry cleaner, you need the person who can work with furs and rebead and things like that. And so he has been working with me to get a good list of people I can go to for these things. And so the other day I was listening to Breezy Von Breezy and her podcast, she does IG Live all the time, and she was talking about retro clean. And she was sitting there showing images of her seeing her vintage linens and lacy things in retro clean. I'm like, oh my gosh, because she deals in what I call true vintage, and I deal in modern vintage. So, you can absolutely avoid a lot of really damaged clothes in modern vintage, just because it's modern and they're not going to be as worn or destroyed over time as something that's much older. But watching her use the retro clean, I went out and bought it. I haven't used it yet. But the fact that there is something I can soak linens or cottons in and get out those pit stains and get out the stains on it, who knew? I didn't know. And so all these beautiful things I've walked by, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with that. Well, guess what? There's something you can do about it. You can repair a hole. Now, it's expensive. I'm not saying it isn't expensive or like an investment, but it depends on what it is. So I've I walked by the other day a Courage plaid jacket from the 70s, and the reason I looked at it, and that wasn't expensive, it was like what, $14.99, but like it had moth holes in it, and I'm like, and there wasn't just one, like one little one. It was like what I call riddled with moth holes, like, you know, probably 10 of these things. And so I didn't buy it. And every time I don't buy something in the Goodwill, like how I go a lot, so like I'll go back the next day to see if it's there, and then if it's gone, I know it was a mistake, and if it's there, I'm like, phew, I was lucky, you know. But, you know, always gone, like the next day. A lot of the things I question on condition, but I like the other aspects of it, always gone like the next day when I go back. So see something great, that there is a solution. Generally, what I've been told is reweaving can be like $50 a hole, right? So if you have, you know, 5 small holes, 5 times 5, $250. If it's something that's worth thousands of dollars, you know, might be totally worth it to you. The other day, I'm laughing because before I talked to Mitchell, I did the dumbest thing ever. Like, you know, like I do all this sourcing of Moschino, and I had this really rare blazer for a man, and it was like from the 80s, and like the women's version has been in museums. So I got it, but then I discovered later after I got it, it was missing one of the patches on the shoulders. So like patches all over, and then like on 2 of the sleeves, it was like I had all these little holes in it. And I thought, and I was just like, oh, I was being very anal that day, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't have it in this condition. Wrong. So I sent it back. So I don't have it now, and now I'm kicking myself because not that I can't get it again, but like the whole reason was I was concerned about the condition, that no one would want it. But according to Mitchell at Mitchell's in Palm Springs, he's like, girl, you got it all wrong. He's like, people expect that there's something wrong with it. And this I really didn't understand. He's like, look, he says it's vintage, you know, it gives it character. It's part of the charm. But flaws, there's going to be these little things that are going to be part of the garment, part of its, you know, character, part of its history. And people tend to overlook it. And this I did not know. I did not know people tend to overlook it because I didn't overlook it myself. And there's been so much vintage I have just not acquired. I've sent back so many rare things. I mean, it's really embarrassing what I've sent back because, say, the condition was off, and I was like, I don't want to sell that. I don't want to sell that. Let somebody else sell it. And then I'm realizing, you know, the whole part of the joy in all of this is to acquire it and to find the hard stuff, but there is quite a lot of joy in repairing and refurbishing something. It's sort of like that feeling you get when your favorite pair of shoes has new heels on it and taps. I used to love that feeling. I had this sidebar. I had this when I was younger. I used to have my uniform, which was my mother hated, by the way. It's because it was the most androgynous thing I could wear. It was always an oversized sweatshirt that covered, you know, the backside, leggings, and short cowboy boots, like the kind that go to your ankle. And I had like those pair that Guess made those pair back in the day. And so I would have these Guess cowboy boots, and I'd wear them out and get another pair. So it's always getting my cowboy boots refurbished and rehealed all the time because I would just wear them out. And so I loved that feeling when they came back to life and they've been polished and all of that. And there's so many things out there now that I've learned about in the reselling community that have just gone unnoticed to me, as obvious as it is. So I recently bought this product that Doc Martens puts out where you can like shine up the boots. It is unbelievable what it does to things. And I've seen resellers use it a lot, and it took me a long time to buy it. And I finally pulled the trigger and I got some in, and like I don't even remember to use it, but then when I do, it's amazing what it can do to something. It's just incredible. So, you know, overlooking things because there's a damage is maybe not something you want to do if you have a good group of people who can help you refurbish it and repair it. And so that means if you're going to invest that kind of money, perhaps you are looking at really nice vintage designer, the kind that can bring hundreds or thousands of dollars. I also have what came into my store, Viden Luxury Consignment, recently, a bunch of vintage from an estate, and one of the pieces, which is this amazing white mink fur cape, totally shedding. Mitchell's like, oh, girl, you got to go to the furrier. And, they can treat it. It might be $100, $150. You can totally treat that, get all that taken care of, get it glazed, cleaned and glazed, and that will all go away, and you'll have something that you will look good and you can sell. So that is something that is on my list to do. So it's obviously something I would sell for thousands, right? And I'm going to invest $100, $150 on that. Totally worth it, all part of it. And there's something really wonderful about the restoration aspect of reselling. It's kind of one of the pieces that, while I haven't focused on it, I do participate in terms of I have this wonderful pilling machine that I use. If somebody's got little pilling, I don't mind. That's the one thing I don't mind because I know I can fix it, right? Some people use razors. I have some sort of larger size plug-in deep pillar that I got online, and it works so well. So deep pilling, I have done until the cows came home. I have done that. I dry clean. I'll get tags sewn back on if it's like hanging down, all those little kind of buttons. And buttons are one of the things that drives me nuts because this vintage Moschino I work with, it's 30, 40 years old, some of this stuff. So the cotton that they use to hold the buttons on has rotted. And so you can lose the button if you don't get it fixed quick. And so recently in my store, I sold a vintage jacket, and I told the woman, and it had just tons of covered buttons down the front. And I was just like, just to let you know, just a piece of advice, you may want to get all these resewn because the string, the cotton in the thread disintegrates, degrades over time. So that's something to do. But all those little things I've always done, tag back on, that kind of thing. I've never replaced a zipper. I've seen beautiful vintage that, I had a dress even returned it when I realized the zipper was broken. And now I'm just like, why did I do that? I could have gotten the zipper fixed. So, it's one of these things that we have to ask ourselves is how much effort and do we want to put into things? And so since I've been lately focused on a lot of high-end vintage, this makes sense for me. And I decided to talk about it because if you are like me and you're avoiding things because you don't know if you can get them clean, it's worth experimenting, it's worth trying, it's worth investing some money. You can make money. And as I talk to people, this is very common, very routine. Like they just factor in the restoration or the cleaning or the repair into the item when they buy it. They already have factored that in as part of the price. And so I'm the one who's like late in the game on all this, and I'm the one bypassing amazing things because I haven't thought, one, that anyone would want it, or that, two, it would make sense to repair it. So that's all part of my new game plan for the fall is to go on and not be afraid of that. Now, there are things that I have spent money on cleaning or repairing, and it didn't work, right? So I have a lot of vintage Moschino, and I'm always at the dry cleaners getting things fixed. And I sometimes take a chance on things, and it doesn't pan out or it doesn't work. And, I've never had to throw away the item. It's just I would sell it at a lesser price and, say it had a problem. And you know what? People would buy it. I'm the one like freaking out, like, So it's a lesson. But I have always wanted it to be perfect. And I think when I first started collecting the vintage Moschino and I found out about this thing called dead stock, I found out about it early on that you could get vintage that had never been worn with the tag still on it. And I was pretty intrigued by that. I'm like, what is that? What is dead stock? Like, I don't even know what it means. And so I learned what it meant. And very early on in my Moschino, I didn't know that it was called this, but my Moschino craziness started when I bought one skirt from a friend of mine in New York. Beautiful, amazing skirt, maxi skirt. It says "O Sole Mio" on it. And after that, and I thought, this is something to always be saved, something to rent to a photographer. It's something I never really want to sell. So I thought, well, what else is out there? And the very next thing I found was a bunch of Moschino suits, new with tags, in England online, and I ended up buying a whole a bundle of things from a woman in England, and she sent me this whole box, and every piece but like one was new with tags Moschino from the 90s. And at the time, I didn't understand or appreciate what that was. I just thought, oh, I can find this stuff even new with tags on it, because I had been coming across some things where the condition was bad or the condition was off, and I was getting really disappointed. And, again, I'm that person who doesn't want to, at that time, didn't want to go through all that. But now I was like, oh, my gosh, I can find it new with tags. So one of my missions is when I source Moschino is I'm always trying to find new with tags. I will pay a premium for something that's new with tags. So in that sense, I really feel like I'm recreating the past and recreating a great archive where it literally has never been worn. And there's a lot more of it out there than one would realize. But yeah, that's kind of where I am now, reflecting on my errors of sourcing vintage and not knowing about the condition. But there are things that can be done, and I think it's great to experiment. I cannot wait to take my first piece to the reweaver because, you know, everything's not wool. I mean, to me, I think wool would seem to be the easiest to repair, just because of the texture. But like I have an acetate skirt that's Moschino. I wonder how they're going to get the hole out. I had a hole in it and then returned it because I learned that I can get it repaired. So we're going to see how it goes and see if this makes sense. Because essentially what I understand is they take the threads from inside of the garment, usually not the lining, but like the part of the fabric that's in the hem and all up inside of it. And that's where they get their threads from, and they literally take them from one place and reweave it through. So I'm really, really excited to see how that's going to work for me. And that's it. This is Jennie, Jennie Walker with JennieGirl's Closet, and just wanted to let you know about the errors of my sourcing ways and what I'm doing to fix it. So there we go. Just a quick little podcast here. I hope everyone is doing well. I appreciate your support. If you like what you heard today and want to give it a review or a 5-star rating on iTunes or a thumbs up or share with people you know in the industry who'd like this kind of content, please do. I'd appreciate it. And I look forward to having you with me on a future episode. If you want to be in touch, you can always be in touch with me on Instagram at JennieGirl's Closet. Thank you so much.